Story time about how I got caught making out with my cousin after escaping a cult. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, send me an Instagram. Before you judge me, just hear me out. 4 years ago, my parents met this guy at our church. He basically convinced them to go live with him in his freaking cult. And for some reason, my parents decided to give him all of our money. For 3 years, my family and I were in this cult. Essentially, we had to work every single day instead of going to school. We were made to wear uniforms. We were also told even when to eat. Every single aspect of our lives was controlled. The third year there, I turned 16. I was the oldest out of my siblings. This is when I grabbed my siblings and I went to talk to my parents in private. And I told my parents that we were sick of this. It was absolutely horrible. Who wants to live in a cult? It actually took another year for me to convince my parents to finally let us go. By the time we left, I was 17 and hadn't seen my family in over 4 years. Thankfully, my parents came to their senses and we left. For some reason, my parents didn't want to contact their parents. So we ended up going to a shelter for 2 months. And then I finally convinced my parents of contacting their parents. This was the blessing we needed. Grandma was so happy to hear from my mom. The entire family didn't actually know what happened to us. They actually assumed we were dead. Go to part 2. Story time about how I got caught making out with my cousin after escaping from a cult. Part 2, and disclaimer, this is not my story time, I'm sending me on Instagram. Our entire family actually thought that my family and I were dead because they hadn't heard from us in 4 years. Thankfully, my grandma was so happy to hear from my mom though. She actually asked my mom if we wanted to go live with them. You see, my grandparents had a 7-bedroom house and they also owned 2 businesses. They also offered my parents jobs. It was such a blessing. Slowly, family started to come over. That's when my cousin and his parents came over and it was lust and love at first sight. A few weeks later, my parents wanted to throw my little brother a birthday party. And of course, my cousin came around too. He started hanging out with us almost every single weekend up until that point. During the party, he asked me if I wanted to go for a walk in the woods. And when we did, he kissed me. It was beautiful and magical. But when we turned around, we saw a bunch of kids from the party, including my little brother who ran off and told my parents. Lucky for me, my parents were so desensitized from the cult that they didn't actually get mad. They just told us never to do it again. But my cousin still comes over. And we always go for a walk in the woods and make out. Is this totally wrong? Because I've suffered so much, I feel like I deserve this. And he's also my second cousin. Does that change anything? What should I do?
I, 22F, asked my boyfriend, 41M, about his thoughts on the possibility of having a one-sided open relationship and he broke up with me. Let me start by saying that our age gap isn't the issue. My boyfriend is the best thing to happen to me in my adult life because of his age, not despite it. Over the 5 years we've been together, I've grown so much as a person thanks, in large part, to his gentle love and overwhelming support and maturity as he was able to guide me through the beginning of adulthood. None of my friends in long-term relationships have anything like what my boyfriend and I have, and they all say they wish they did. Also, he's more attractive and in better shape than all their boyfriends. So if your first reaction to this situation is that some dirty old man is taking advantage of a young naive girl, then you're wrong. Anyways, he is an administrative supervisor at my company. He trained me my first 2 weeks on the job when I first got hired, and we hit it off immediately because we have a lot of things in common. Nothing happened then, but I just couldn't stop thinking about him. So after about a month I stopped by his office after work and asked him out for coffee. 6 months later I moved in with him. That first year was the best time I've ever had in a relationship. We traveled, ate out, went to shows and movies. He taught me so much about life. He would really engage with me and listen to what I had to say. He also wasn't afraid to ask me those really tough questions that made me look at situations from another perspective. He taught me how to stand up for myself, and conflict resolution. The more time we spent together, the more I love him. Then the virus happened. My boyfriend is not perfect. One major problem is he is a micromanager when it comes to work, and a workaholic. As soon as lockdown started, he started working nonstop. Sometimes he would work 14 to 16 hours a day. From the end of April to the second week in June, he worked 36 days straight. He would come home, kiss me, work out, shower, and go to bed, just to get up the next morning and do it all over again. No one asks him to work like that, he just does. He says, I have to be an advocate for our team, and make sure they're in good hands. Due to his work ethic, I got really lonely during this time. I talked to him about it, and he cut back some of his work. He even started doing silly things like ordering cheesy decorations online, then decorating our dining room like a Chinese restaurant and ordering takeout from our favorite Chinese place so it would feel like we went out. It was fun and nice, but I was still lonely. Around this time, an old friend from high school contacted me through Facebook. We started talking first on a message, then we started texting. He was really there for me, and showed me a lot of attention. After a while he asked if I wanted to meet up for drinks. I said yes, since my boyfriend wasn't home. I ended up drinking more than I usually do. Before I knew it, we were kissing. I'm not going to lie, it felt really good. I did allow it to go too far, but I only gave him brain and no intimacy was had. I left and went home. I felt awful, not because I did it, but because I did it behind my boyfriend's back. The next day I asked my boyfriend if we could talk. I started out by telling him how lonely I felt for these past few months and how I wanted to ask his thoughts on an open relationship. He was actually really receptive. He sat down with me and asked several questions about our relationship, and how strong did I think it was. He listened as I explained that I loved him but needed attention that he can't provide right now. I wanted him, but I didn't feel like my needs were being met, and this would be an easy and safe way for me to get that attention I've been missing. He asked what brought this on, and I explained about my friend, and how I wasn't interested in a relationship with him but I would like to go out with him just for some distraction from everything going on. I then also took the time to inform him that this would be a one-sided open relationship. I was not comfortable sharing him with any other woman. However, I explained to him how this is completely different with me. I don't work nearly as much as he does, I am alone a lot more, and need the connection from someone else way more than he does. Since he works all the time, he has no time to even look for partners. After I said all of this, he sat there for several minutes and that's when I saw the hurt and pain in his eyes. It was until that moment I realized how selfish I had been. It was like someone poured ice water over me. I had not once thought about him in this entire situation. But before I could say a word he said, "You need to leave." I tried to talk more, but he said he was not in the place emotionally to communicate with me effectively, and that I needed to give him space. I just broke down crying. I had messed it all up, and hadn't even realized it till that moment. He left after that and asked me to leave before he got back. About 2 hours later, I got a text from him saying that we need some time apart, and he didn't feel like we needed to be in a relationship right now. That was 2 days ago. I'm at my parents' house now, and I can't eat, or sleep. I'm a wreck. I know I'm a dumb idiot and a horrible person, but please if you have any advice on how to fix this, please help.
I, 22F, asked my boyfriend, 41M, about his thoughts on the possibility of having a one-sided open relationship and he broke up with me. He called last Tuesday and said he wanted to talk. I was both scared and over the moon. We hadn't talked since the Saturday before and I missed him like mad. He says he wants to meet at my parents' house, and I agreed, although I thought that was a little weird. When he pulled into the driveway, he sent me a text asking me to come outside. I went out to meet him and he was standing in front of his car. I immediately saw that he had someone in the car with him, and I just broke down. I knew what was coming, and I didn't want to face it. He was so kind. He comforted me, and helped me up on the porch where we both sat on the steps. He told me that he loved me, but my actions proved to him that we were in two different places in our lives, and he wasn't going to hold me back anymore. He said he knew I needed to live more, and enjoy life before settling down. He apologized for holding me back for so long, and thanked me for his best 5 years since his wife had died. I wanted to lay down on the ground and die right there. I just sobbed, it's all I could do. My dad finally came out and helped me back into the house. My dad then went back out and talked to my boyfriend. They actually get on very well despite what many would think. They talked for a while, I don't really remember how long because I was near hysterical at that point. My mom gave me something to help me relax. When my father came back and he whispered something to my mom, and she helped me upstairs to my room. I laid there for a while till I heard someone pull into the driveway. I looked out and saw that a moving truck had backed in. He had all my belongings, at our place, packed up and delivered to my parents' house. That's when I really lost all control of myself. I was crying so hard I didn't feel like I was in control of my own body anymore. My mom ended up sleeping in my room with me all night. In the past 3 days I have been out of bed probably less than 10 times, and that was just to use the bathroom. I'm lost, and worse than that I lost him. But I was finally able to eat today, so I figured I would give you all a look at the end of my world.
My husband is falling in love with an old friend of his who moved into our neighborhood recently. He denies this but his actions tell a different story. My husband and I have been married for 11 years and we have only ever had one issue. The 21-year-old woman who rents an apartment down the street from our house. She and my husband knew each other from years ago, because she used to be friends with my brother-in-law. So my husband knew her when they were younger, but they didn't stay in contact or have any relationship with each other until last summer when she moved into her current apartment. She's a nice girl, but sometimes my husband's actions towards her make me super mad. The first thing that bothered me was one night she had come over to watch our sons when our normal babysitter pulled out at the last minute. She refused payment, so we bought her takeout from a local restaurant with the rest of us and she ate dinner at the house. While babysitting the boys earlier, she had been swimming with the boys in our pool, and at one point during dinner said something about being cold. I was going to tell her I would run upstairs and grab her one of my sweaters when my husband took off the hoodie he was wearing and gave it to her. It just made me feel uncomfortable for some reason. I talked to my husband and told him how it made me feel, and told him next time in a situation like that it was so much easier to go and get one of my sweaters. He did apologize, but it doesn't help that after he gave it to her she kept it. She still has not given it back. Another incident that happened was last night. She came over for an elementary school graduation party for one of sons. She got a phone call in the middle of it and left for about an hour. My husband went over to check on her, and when she came back she seemed really upset, saying that something was wrong with her mom health-wise. Later on at around midnight, she and my husband were talking by the fire pit on a swing we have. She still seemed really upset and he had his arm around her shoulders, clearly trying to cheer her up. None of that bothered me. What bothers me is that when I came back outside they were both asleep on the swing with her head on him. I woke them up and they both seemed startled. She left soon after. I talked to my husband again about how it bothered me and he apologized, but said that he was just trying to make her feel better, and since the relationship is completely platonic, I don't have anything to be uncomfortable about. He asked if I would be upset if she was a cousin. I told him no, but she's not a cousin. He said he understood, but the way he has been acting today tells me differently. He keeps telling me how much he worries about her, and how he will try his best to make sure she is okay. My husband is falling in love with an old friend of his who moved into our neighborhood recently. He denies this, but his actions tell a different story. So I sat down with my husband and had another talk with him. I told him I wasn't accusing him of anything and laid out exactly how everything had made me feel. From her keeping his hoodie for days on end to falling asleep on each other, I laid it all out. He seemed genuinely sorry that I felt that way, and said he was happy that I talked to him about it all and was open about it. But he said that he didn't understand. He said that if I was secure in our relationship, trusted his loyalty and monogamy, and stated that since I trusted her, he didn't understand why I was upset about these things. I have never trusted her, however, although she is nice. If they were drunk and alone, I would not put it past her to make a move on him. Due to this, I tried to ask him if he would feel like it wasn't a big deal if the roles were reversed, and it was a male friend who I was getting close to like that. He said that if there was a male, things would be different. I asked him why, and he could not come up with an answer. After that, he conceded, and said that he respected that I wasn't comfortable with it and did not think it was different. He said he was going to be more aware around her. He said he didn't think it was fair to cut her off or stop inviting her over, however, or having her watch the boys, and I did agree. Edit. I remembered the fact that she still had the hoodie, so I went to go get it. When I got it, I could tell she had worn it a lot as it smelled exactly like her. Due to this, I washed it. When I was folding the laundry, my husband came in and saw that I had washed it and definitely seemed a little annoyed. He sighed, rolled his eyes and shook his head. I didn't say anything though. Later on, as he was putting everything away into his closet, he held up the hoodie and was like, I told you that you didn't have to wash it. If you're so sure I'm going to cheat on you, why does it matter that my hoodie smells like her? And then he took it and threw it onto the floor of his closet. I told him I didn't think he was going to cheat on me, but I didn't like his clothing smelling overpoweringly like another woman. He said I was harping on this and that I was behaving ridiculously. We did not speak for the rest of the day. Today, after he got dressed, his closet door was open and I saw the hoodie wasn't on the floor anymore, but it wasn't with his other sweatshirts either. I asked him where it was, and he didn't answer. He just said, really low, to himself, "You've got to be kidding me, here we go again." I told him that I wasn't trying to start anything. It had been on the floor and now it wasn't, so if it needed to be cleaned again or ironed, I would. He turned around, told me to let go of the effing hoodie. I'm not talking about it again. I was completely shocked because he never talked to me like that before, especially not in front of our kids. He didn't even apologize. He just left for work and slammed the door.
I ruined my 8-year relationship after uninviting a girl from my boyfriend's party behind his back. I posted a couple of months ago and received so much hate. I was rude to one of my boyfriend's lady friends, who was a victim of child SA. I won't go into details, but I was worried my boyfriend will leave me for her because of how nice he was to her. I'm not a bad person, but I was called all sorts of names by people. I told my boyfriend the truth of why his friend wasn't talking to him, and his reaction broke me. He started crying, saying how I could be so cruel to her and him. He said he was only helping her because his aunt was also a victim who suffered all her life till she decided to stop fighting. He said he could never and would never think of leaving me for another woman because he loved me a lot. I cried with him and told him how sorry I was and I wanted to apologize to the girl. He said she has left, hasn't come back, and no one knows where she is. He said he tried calling her, but her number now comes as invalid. He said he tried asking around and no one knows where she is. He is afraid for her, and now so am I. I'm scared that this girl might have done something to herself, and I can't live with that. My boyfriend has since said that he wants to break, and called me yesterday and told me that he wants to break up. He said if after an 8-year relationship I can't trust him, then I never can. He told me he was planning to propose to me on my 28th birthday, but he thinks there is no point in moving this relationship forward. I am heartbroken, and I've tried to reason with him and begging him for a second chance. But he said he can't be with me anymore and can't look at me with love. I am heartbroken and shattered. I've ruined my relationship, possibly have caused an innocent person to fall in harm, and I can never live with that. I feel guilty and angry at myself for getting my feelings in the way. I wish I could find that girl and apologize, and I hope my boyfriend changes his mind, but both seem unlikely at the moment. My mom is trying to console me, but my sister is being harsh and telling me the only one to blame here is me. I don't know who to talk to because I know that the reaction will be the same everywhere, and everyone will have the same judgment. I wish I could turn around time and change things.